Let's pray, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our discourse in Daniel chapter 8 this morning. Lord, thank you so much uh, again for your word, the clarity that it brings. And if we stop and take a look at some of the details and unpack these particular events that occur within the future, we can see again great detail, thorough clarity from your scripture. May we put aside just thoughts and just focus truly on what you have revealed to Daniel and what Daniel has given to us about what you have given to him. Thank you so much for just giving us confidence and information concerning the future. For it's in your son's name. Amen. Okay, so we are going along at a snail's pace in Daniel chapter 8. We're right in the middle of it, verse 14-ish, somewhere around there. Looking at the timeline, this is about as far as we went. We have not went any further than this. We've gotten to Darius the Mede, and then from chapter 6 of Daniel in the lion's den, and now we have got, in chapter 8, we've kind of taken a step back into the last days of the Babylonian Empire, and how it's right on the heels of being conquered by Persia, essentially. And the last king, as I keep mentioning, is of Babylon is Belshazzar. He is the co-regent of Babylon, with Nabonidus being the ruler, the king at this particular time. Okay, since Belshazzar, since Daniel keeps mentioning Belshazzar, we are zooming in to Belshazzar's timeline of his reign. He ruled for 11 years. His reign ended in 539 BC, and of course he was taken over by Cyrus. So his reign begins at 550, and in the first year of Belshazzar's reign, we find that that's chapter 7. And of course, that has everything to do with the four beasts, right, that we looked at. And now we are in chapter 8, which, again, this is another vision that Daniel is having 2 years later in Susa, which is away from Babylon. As a matter of fact, he's involved in taking care of some business concerning the king. Either the king has sent him there, or the king is also there along with him, and he is taking care of some business along with the king. And along this time, Daniel receives this particular dream, or this particular vision. I have to continue to bring this up. We are out of the Aramaic language, and we are into the Hebrew language. Again, this is very important. The language shift here is not on accident. This is purposeful. It seems to focus on the Hebrew people. Remember, Hebrew was very local. It was the universal language at that time was Aramaic. Okay? And so now Daniel sees fit to now write to the Hebrew, writing in Hebrew language concerning his people and their destiny. I think this runs parallel with Gentile history. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to try to pictograph where we've been so far. I don't know if it's gonna be successful or not. I started working on it. Okay, so we're gonna take all the information from chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 7, and this, and we're gonna try to lump this all together in the next couple once we get done with this chapter. Okay, but I believe that this runs parallel with Gentile history, and I believe this is becoming clear as we go through this chapter. So from the previous lecture, Daniel continues to outline the activity and the character of the horn. Again, we have not gotten any explanation as to what these are yet. Okay? If we were kind of reading this and didn't have any information beyond what we've gone through, all we're just looking at is details so far, and how this extended horn and its actions define it as the transgression the transgression. And this transgression of this horn is underscored by the fact that he has destroyed the sanctuary, which is associated again with the temple, which is interesting because at this point the temple is not there. Daniel's in Babylon, right? And the hosts, and we had associated that particular word or phrase with looking at it in the Hebrew with Israel, the Israelite people that are given over to him, this horn, due to his mindset and activity. The reason why the horn is extended is because he believes in his mind this horn is greater than the commander of the hosts, right? So going back and taking a look at a couple of these characteristics, again, this small horn came out of one of the four horns of the goat, right? It grew exceedingly towards the east, the south, and the beautiful. That word beautiful, as we looked at, is associated primarily with Israel, the land of Israel. This horn grew to the heavens and destroyed again some of the hosts and the stars. I believe they are talking about the same people, that the host and the stars are the same group. Okay? And of course, this horn magnifies himself to be equal to, or I would even say even greater than, the commander of the hosts. The actions of the small horn are detailed too, as we mentioned, that the horn removes the regular or the continual. That word sacrifice is added, although it could be extended to just mean activities that are involved within the sanctuary, right? As the horn destroys that too, as it's mentioned in the previous verses. And of course, the horn also takes down the host, which is interesting. Okay? Hopefully this is becoming clear as we walk through this. So let's go ahead and jump to verse or statement 14, which is a rather curious statement. Daniel writes this, and he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. I'm actually going to read from verse 13. It says, then I heard a holy one speaking to another holy one, and said to that particular holy one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular or the continual sacrifice apply while the transgression causes desolation, not horror, but desolation, as to allow both the holy place and the host to be trampled? Verse 14, he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored. So Daniel gets to enter into a conversation, and this holy one asks him, hey, how long will these events occur? What duration of time? And the other holy one who's talking with him replies, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. I think we need to take a look at this statement a bit more closely. So the word 2,300, this phrase occurs only here in the Hebrew scriptures. And of course, it occurs here in the book of Daniel. This is the only time that this phrase occurs, 2,300. And it's very specific too. Okay, so this is not an approximation. The reason we know this is that cardinal numbers, that is, numbers that are counted in the Hebrew scriptures, are written out. It's very similar to, and not like numerical symbols in English. So this is how we would write it out in English, 2,300, but that's not the way it looks in the Hebrew script. Okay, it's written out as full words. As a matter of fact, this is the word for 2,300 in the Hebrew script. Let's take a look at each of these words and break it down, and then we'll do a little bit of math this morning. This word underscored in red is the Hebrew word aleph. This phrase occurs 500 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It occurs 3 times in the book of Daniel, just this word aleph. This word aleph means 1,000. 1,000. However, if you can see here, this word here is written in the plural form, okay? Alephim. So it's more than 1,000. We would say it's 2,000. Right? When you see this word written here, Alephim. Shaloshe is the second Hebrew phrase that is highlighted in red here. This Hebrew phrase occurs 431 times in the text, 9 times in the book of Daniel, and it is translated as 3 or third. As a matter of fact, in this chapter alone, this word appears as well. In Daniel chapter 8, verse or statement 12, okay? Oh, whoops. There's always an error. Verse 1, I'm sorry, not verse 12. In verse 1, it says, in the third year of the reign of Belshazzar the king, Shaloshe, right here, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. So we've already seen this word already, Shaloshe, and it means either 3 or a third. So we've got Alephim, Shaloshe, and then the last phrase here is Me'ah. Shaloshim, Alephim, Shaloshe, Me'ah. This phrase occurs 581 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 3 times here in the book of Daniel, and it is very simple. It just means 100. So we put all these together, presto, blammo, 2,300. So Daniel, again, using these words, writing it out in cardinal script, spells out, again, 2 1,000s, 3 100s, or 2,300. Pretty easy. And again, this is not, I don't believe that this is an approximation. These are exact numbers here. Let's talk about evenings and mornings. This is kind of an interesting phrase here. Boker Areb is the Hebrew phrase, evenings and mornings. I was taking a look at, I was kind of curious, so I kind of wanted to know what other people thought about this, and there was more than one perspective concerning this particular statement that Daniel wrote down in Daniel chapter 8. There are people that are convinced that the 2,300 evenings and morning point more to the sacrifices, right? That this vision discusses. Okay. I mean, in some respects that would make sense because the question is asked about that, right? Even some of the details that are given within Daniel's dream concern the sanctuary and the activities that occur there within there. As a matter of fact, we see this phrase too in Leviticus chapter 6, verse 20, concerning the offerings and the activity of Aaron and the priests. Whoops. It says, this is the offering which Aaron and his sons are to present to the Lord on the day which he is anointed. Then 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a continual tamid. That's the same word that we've been looking at in chapter 8 of Daniel. I said a grain offering, half of it in the morning, boker, and half of it in the evening, areb. Same words here. Okay. There's also a secondary reason that one would underline or underscore this particular, would believe that this 2,300 refers to the activity of the sanctuary in Daniel. And that is, again, that the word continual is associated again with the word sanctuary in verses 13 and 14. It says in I'll start at just verse 12. And on the account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horns along with the continual sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. Then I heard the Holy One speaking to another Holy One and said to that particular one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the continual sacrifice or the regular apply while the transgression causes desolation, so as to allow the holy place and the host to be trampled, right? So I could see why this would be the case, right? That the 2300 evenings and mornings point more to the sacrifices that this vision discusses, that they're not really days in terms of not really days really, but it's focused more on the sacrifices themselves and the activity. That once the activity is over, well then, there you go. Then there's another perspective that there are others who are convinced that the 2300 evenings and mornings just refer to just days and nothing more. I mean, I guess really in reality, it doesn't really make much of a difference, because again, the sacrifices are kind of surrounding this particular event and the temple. Here's my perspective on this. I'm personally convinced that Daniel is not writing about the regular activity, but that these are just days. These are days that point out very specific events that occur within that period of time, and those events are very important to the Hebrew people. Okay? If you see the destruction of the temple before you or whatever, you probably would want to know, if from a Hebrew mind, you probably would want to know not just why that happened, but if those things are going to be restored, since the sacrifices are central to the activity of Israel as a nation. Let's take a look at some things of why I believe that this is the case, that it's just actual days and nothing more than that. From the mind of a Hebrew or an Israelite, particularly Daniel, the phrase evenings and mornings would be fairly easy to recognize. Daniel would be familiar with this particular phrase, as a matter of fact, because the first uses of these words are found in the book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. Again, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening, Arab, and Boker. Morning. One day. So evenings and mornings really refer to 24-hour periods. Okay? And of course, Daniel, again, being a good Hebrew, would know this particular pattern because it's seen all throughout the text. And by the way, in Genesis 1, there is no temple there, right? It's just speaking of literal evenings and mornings. Again, a secondary counter reason is if the focus was the continual activity, that is these sacrifices and offerings, these regular activity that occurred at this particular time, then what happens when the activity in the sanctuary that they seem to be associated with are no longer standing? If you don't have a temple, you can't perform these, right? So does that mean that time stops? I don't think so. I think it's 2300 evenings and mornings, and then the temple will be restored, and then activity will commence. It will continue, right? So I don't think that the sacrifices are the focus. I think that what happens is that there's 2300 days to when it seems that this sanctuary will be destroyed, and then it will be properly restored. Matter of fact, we see some of this in Daniel chapter 8, verses 11 and 12. Same chapter here. Concerning the horn and his activity. It says, and it magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host. Again, this is the attitude, the nature that this horn has. And it removed the continual sacrifice from him. And the place of his sanctuary was destroyed. It would appear that there's a point in time where they could perform this activity. And when this happens, the people who are performing this activity will no longer be able to. And on the account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the sacrifice. And it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. I believe all of this context here tells us that this horn will come in, he will destroy the sanctuary, he will kill off most of the hosts, right? And the activity will stop. And from that period of time to when it's restored, that is, the building of the temple and the activities commence, there will be 2,300 evenings and mornings. I think that's very clear. So I don't believe it's more pointing to the sacrifices. I believe that the holy ones are having this conversation that in between this time, about 2,300 evenings and mornings will commence until the holy place will be properly restored. This Hebrew word properly restored is the Hebrew word sadak. Okay? This word occurs 41 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 2 times in the book of Daniel. And it's not really like properly restored. It actually means justify or righteous. Okay? So for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be just or justified. Now, what's interesting is this word is written in the Nephal stem. The Nephal stem is the passive of the qual. Remember, the qual stem is active, right? Where the subject is doing the activity. The passive is the impact of that action. So it seems that it will be justified or translated properly restored. Why? Because it seems that the environment is different. The horn will come to take it down, and something will happen to where the impact of that the temple itself will be restored. Okay? So after 2,300 days, the impact after that will commence, that the holy place will be re-erected and activities again will commence. That seems to be the idea here. In other words, it will be made right or will be made just. The holy place will be made well or made right. Again, the Holy One who is speaking to Daniel told him that after the horn brings down the holy place, again, and with it the hosts of the commander, after this specific period of time, which is 2,300 evenings and mornings or days, that the holy place that was trampled will be made right or restored. Okay? Man. So where are we so far? Well, Daniel continues to outline the activity and the character, again, of the extended horn. This is where we're at so far. Okay? And define it as the transgression, right? So let's continue here. Verse 16. I'll start at verse 15. When I, Daniel, this is verse 15. I don't know what I was doing here. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. And behold, standing before me was one who looked like a man. So Daniel wrote that the vision that he had was completed. So this is the end of it right here in verse 14. This is the end of what he saw, what God had given him. And again, whenever there is a change in scene, we see the word behold or hene, the intent to focus on something else. There's something else that has happened here. So when Daniel is done seeing all of this amazing imagery, right, concerning the goat and the ram and the horn and him and it being extended and all of this, he sees standing before him one who had the appearance of a man, okay, just out of nowhere, right? We continue reading verse 16. It says, and I heard a voice of a man between the banks of the Uli, and called out to him, and he called out and said, Gabriel, give this man an understanding of the vision. Daniel wrote that he heard the voice of a man. Now, this is kind of fascinating here. There's a lot going on here. The voice doesn't come from the man who's in front of him. Okay? The voice comes from another. Okay? And this other voice tells the man that is in front of him, whose name is Gabriel. Okay? And instructs Gabriel, that is this man in front of him, to give Daniel an understanding. So this voice isn't coming from Gabriel, it's coming from somewhere else. And telling Gabriel, hey, give Daniel the explanation, the understanding of this vision, of what he saw. Let's take a look at this word Gabriel, or this name here. Gabriel is the Hebrew name. 2 times it occurs in the Hebrew scriptures. Okay? And this name only appears in the book of Daniel. Okay? Now, again, we're talking about the Hebrew scriptures here. I believe he does make an appearance in the Greek scriptures, right? As we know the birth of Christ well. Okay? So it appears that he has this function of being a messenger of some type. Okay? This name comes from 2 Hebrew words, geber, which is frequently translated mighty man or strong man, right? And El, which essentially is the singular form for God. So if you put these 2 words together, the name means warrior of God or man of God, strong man of God, something to that effect. So it's more than likely, based upon the appearance of this individual, this being that is in front of him, this is more than likely a divine being. We call them angels, a messenger, a divine messenger sent to Daniel to give him understanding of what God had given him concerning this vision that he saw. Let's continue here. Chapter 8, verse 18. Actually, 17. So he came near to where I was standing. And when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end. This is kind of funny, right? I don't understand individuals these days. Maybe it's I guess I do. I mean, I was young once. Okay. I'm still young, but I was younger maybe. Okay. And I could remember hearing, we used to sing those songs, right? Lord, show me your glory type deal, right? Show me your glory, Lord. I want to see it, right? I don't think we understood what we were asking, and things like that. Or I'd love to see an angel or an angelic being, that'd be nice. You know what I'm saying? Oftentimes when we read these particular accounts, these individuals are very honest, right? An angel appears before them, starts walking towards them, and they freak out, right? Daniel begins to underscore this. I don't think we kind of know what we're asking when we kind of ask these questions, right? Matter of fact, I can't wait to get there. You know what I'm saying? You pass into glory and then you see an angelic host, you'd probably be scared then too. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, what is that? Right? Or who are you? Daniel wrote that Gabriel approached Daniel and Daniel responded. He didn't go, hey, Gabriel, nice to meet you. I've been waiting on you. No, he responded by being extremely terrified, so terrified that he fainted. He fell on his face, not to worship him, not to acknowledge him. He fell on his face because he fainted. Okay? Oh, man. We don't know what we ask all the time. This is a response to his terrified state. Gabriel replied and said, hey, understand that he didn't, and now the text doesn't say that he helped him up. Maybe he just like lay there and went, hey, I'm supposed to give you understanding about this. Maybe I'll wait till you're done. Catch your breath or something. Anyway, Gabriel replied that he was going to give him understanding. I mean, Gabriel's just doing the job, right? That pertains to the time of the end. Interesting. This is an interesting phrase here. Let's take a look a little bit more closely at this phrase. Ayif kates is the Hebrew statement. This is an interesting phrase. Let's break down each of these words, and then we'll take a look at some interesting details. The word for time, again, is the word ayith, or eighth. This word occurs 296 times in the Hebrew scriptures, just the word time. Okay? And it occurs 16 times in the book of Daniel. It is translated either time or season, either a particular period of time or a season where something occurs or happens, right? Again, this word is often used to discuss a certain period of time or to specify a certain time. Okay? So it's not necessarily used for chronological time, like it's 9:33, but usually a period of time, right? Or to specify a certain particular time where events take place or occur. The word for end is shalak. 67 times this word occurs in the Hebrew text and 3 times in the book of Daniel, and it is frequently translated as end or after. This word, particularly the word end, underscores a finale or conclusion, or a particular completion of an event, a certain period of time, or an occurrence. Putting these words together, that the time end, basically, there are similar phrases that use these words that are found in Daniel. in a couple of places. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 19, okay, we see it mentioned here again. He says, "Behold, I'm going to let you know what will occur at the final period of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end." This set time that happens at the conclusion. We also see this phrase used in Daniel chapter 11, verse 35. It says, "Some of those who have insight will fall in order to refine, purge, and make them pure until the end time, because it is still to come at the appointed time." Interesting phrase here. We'll talk about that when we get there, okay? Which I don't know when, but we'll do our best. Daniel chapter 11, verse 40, same chapter here, has the kind of the turn of phrase here. It says, "At the end time, the king of the south will collide with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships, and will enter countries, overflow them, and pass through." Okay? That's verse 40. Okay. Again, at the end time, at this particular period of time, it seems that the king of the south or the king of the north, these kings will collide with a person known as him. In verse 45 of chapter 11, sorry. I think, yes, I'll just read it out because it's not, I didn't put it here on the slides. It says, "He will pitch his tents, the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him." The word time is not used here, of course, but the word end is. He will come to his conclusion, and no one will help him. No one will assist him. And of course, all of these surrounding events, particularly within this particular chapter, refers to this this period of time, right? Daniel 12:4 also has this particular phrase. It says, "But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase." So we have the time of the end of time. We have the end time, right? I believe all these are referring to the same time, the same period of time, right? Where all of these things are going to occur that Daniel has saw, that Gabriel is getting ready to give him the explanation, the understanding of these symbols and what they mean and why it's important. Daniel essentially repeats the same thing in the last two statements he made above, in verse 18 to 19. It says, now while he was talking with me, I sank into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Again, he's terrified, right? Gabriel approaches him. He's scared. He faints. Gabriel begins to start talking. He probably comes to, sees him again. He faints, right? He says, I sank into a deep sleep. Yeah, you did, Daniel. That's a great way to put it. With my face to the ground. But he touched me and made me stand upright. Again, you need some help. I try to talk to you. You keep fainting. I need, here, get up. Right? It says, behold, I'm going to let you know what will occur at the final period of indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end. He mentions this twice, Gabriel, in verse 18 and 19. So Daniel essentially repeated the same thing, maybe because, he was out of it. He wanted to maybe have him clarify this. Of course, when you see things spoken twice, that's very important. Again, as Gabriel was talking with him, he became weak, again, due to his terrified state. Gabriel touched him and stood him up. And Gabriel repeated once more that he will give Daniel understanding concerning this particular period of time, which is referred to as the end. The end. Okay? So we've already got a couple of things here that we can kind of underscore here, that this particular vision that Daniel saw was going to come later on, right? That this particular vision that Daniel saw refers to very specific events, but very specific things that are going to occur in sequence. Okay? And that these images, these symbols, that Daniel saw, he was going to get understanding from this messenger concerning this period of time. So to sum up, Daniel has completed the vision, or shall we say God has completed the vision that Daniel saw, and is approached by a divine being known as Gabriel, who is preparing to tell him the explanation of the vision that he saw, as it pertains to a particular time in history known as the end. The end. Okay? All of these images that Daniel saw, I am convinced, are within this particular period of time. Right? That's all I got. Yeah, the end, right? No. Next week, Lord willing, we will begin to start to go through the explanation. We've looked at some of them already, right? We've made some clarifications and some understandings of some of these things that Daniel saw already, but we are going to go through and see what Gabriel says concerning these details and these events that occur. Let's go ahead and pray, and we will close out this lesson here. Lord, as I mentioned before we started this discourse, it seems that the details here are very clear. Our challenge is to slow down, to not just read through it right away to get to the next chapter or the next thing, but to sit down and really ponder and think about these details, to ask questions and try to find the answers to those questions so that we can gain more understanding, more knowledge, more clarity concerning your word and this period of time that you revealed to Daniel known as the end. May we, as believers, do our due diligence to study, to again continue to dig into the text so that we may have confidence not just in our lives here, but what we can look forward to in terms of the world at large and ultimately your justice being spread throughout the entire world, what that looks like. Thank you so much for everything you do and for what you have given to us, the insight that you have given to us. For it's in your son's name. Amen.